Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Heather Lewis, and I started flipping furniture when I had moved out of my parents' house and decided to come to a new city. I was in between jobs and I started flipping furniture as a hobby and something to pay my rent the first few months, but it ended up being something that was able to pay my entire rent, so I decided to stick with it, and since then I've been flipping furniture. So for today's video, do you guys remember that French provincial set that I had done just a few videos back on this channel here? I had mentioned that there was a mirror for it as well, and I was like in the middle of taping it off, and I decided that this would be a good video to show you guys in case, because a lot of sets, like dresser sets or just dressers alone, have mirrors with it, and after you refinish it, sometimes they don't always match. So I thought it would be not only fun, but very informational to show you guys how I flip my mirrors that go along with the dressers that I've already refinished. So we're gonna be doing that today with our French provincial mirror. So for this video, we're gonna have some pretty weird angles because the mirror has to be laid flat down in order for us to do this, but I think we'll be able to make it work. There's just gonna be some weird angles. And you guys can probably see in the back of me is this You guys can probably see that behind me is the French provincial I had done in a few videos back, and unfortunately I can't get rid of it, or I can't sell it on Marketplace until this mirror is done. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on this mirror so we can get everything posted on the Marketplace. So the first step in refinishing a mirror is taping off the actual mirror part. You don't want to get paint on it, and if you do, it's not that big of a deal because we have solutions to be able to take it off the mirror, but I just think that it's safer to actually just protect the edges, and that way there will be less paint on it from the beginning. So I've got just my painter's tape here. I know a lot of people will also use frog tape. I believe it's the green tape, but this is what I have laying around. You can see that I've already done a lot of the edging, and because there's so many curves, I've been, ripping off very small pieces. It's not very efficient, but that's the best way I've figured out how to do it so far. So I did half of it, and we've got the other half so that I can show you guys how to do it. So we're right in the middle of a curve right now, so I'm just gonna do my best to actually get the paint or the painter's tape on it. I would rather, show a little bit of the mirror than get it on the frame of the mirror, because then when I go to paint, there will be spots missing once I rip all the tape off. So if you can get in close, so if you look closely, there's actually a little bit of the mirror showing. But that's okay because, like I said, we will have solutions to be able to fix that. So once we are onto the step of peeling everything off, I'll be able to show you guys how to get the paint, if any gets on it, how to get the paint off. So now I'm just gonna go around and finish taping off the edges. Now, if you can get lucky enough, I've been able to do this on a few times on the mirror, but I've actually been able to stick the tape kind of under the frame. Not all mirrors are gonna call for this, but if you can see how I'll just show it again. So if you can see how I'm just kind of sticking it under the frame, it's allowing me to cover a lot more just because of, with all the curves, it's just going straight under anyways. So if you can do that, that's really nice. It'll call for a lot less smaller pieces as you're trying to work through the curves, but otherwise just keep doing it as you're doing it and eventually it'll get done. Especially on these corners, if you can do it. I unfortunately can't with this one, but these corners are where most of the small pieces are just because the tape doesn't turn with you. So it makes it a little bit harder, but that's okay. The mirror is taped off the best that I can tape it off with all the curves. So we're gonna go ahead and wipe this down a little bit. I don't wanna wipe it too much, but you know, still taking that Dawn dish soap and wiping a little bit of it off. There's still as much grease on this, if not more, than on the dressers because, you know, people are putting their face up close to it and all that. So I'm gonna go get a rag and just wipe this off. So now when it comes to wiping down the mirror, I'm only gonna be doing the frame part. Once everything is said and done, then I'll go back with some Windex and actually wipe down the mirror part of it. But just for now, I'm gonna be doing the frame part of wiping it down. Now that that's done, we're gonna make sure and just rinse it all off. Now we're gonna let it dry and we can get on to sanding. All right, so I have 100 grit sandpaper here and I am not going to sand with a sander of any type. I don't know if like the rhythm of the sander would screw with the glass and I don't want to take any chances. So I'm just gonna hand sand it. I'm gonna do it as light as I can just because I don't want to risk any of this glass shattering at all. So I've got my sandpaper, it's just 100 grit, and I'm gonna go around the edges. We just did a very light scuff sand. I'm not sure if sanding the mirror is really necessary, but I know that sanding it is a big part of having the paint adhere to the surface. So I figured it better be safe than sorry and just sand a little bit of it as lightly as I could. So now that that is done, I'm gonna go grab my primer and we're gonna start priming. Before I get ahead of myself, of course, always wipe back the sand dust or the sawdust that happened when you were sanding. So we're gonna do that and then prime. All right, so usually I will roll on my primer, but because there's so many curves and I wanna make sure I get it all at once, I decided I'm just gonna use my paintbrush. It is damp, so it'll glide on easier. I just have a very little bit of paint in here. It's really not gonna take that much just to do the frame of the mirror. And for my primer, I am using the 321 primer. I've used it so many times that you can barely even see what it looks like, but I will have it in my description box down below if you are looking for a good primer. I really love this stuff and I 100% recommend it. So we are gonna get started on priming this piece and it shouldn't take too long. So when getting in these design pieces, I just kind of wipe over it, but you can see that it doesn't really get in. So I just kind of jab my brush in there, but then at the end I smooth it out because I don't want a whole bunch of puddles in there because I mean, this is part of the French Provincial and I think that it's a really pretty design. So I'm just making sure that I don't let anything pool in there. So I'm jabbing it. And I mean, whatever way you need to get it from stop pooling, that's exactly what I'm doing. With any mirror, especially a mirror as curvy as this, you gotta make sure that nothing pools. Even even if it's not one of those design pieces, just any curves, paint and primer and everything just really loves to pool up. So you gotta make sure, because otherwise you'll have to go back and sand it down later on. All right, so the primer is all dry now. It's been just about an hour. This stuff dries pretty quickly. And we are going back in with the same chiffon cream that we used on the French Provincial. I want the whole set to match thoroughly. I want it all to look similar and go together perfectly. So I've got just a little bit of paint in here. I'm guessing it's gonna take 2 or 3 coats, just like the French Provincial dresser that we did in the other video, but I've got it in here. I'm just gonna make sure that I go all the way around. And just as I did with the primer, I'm kind of dabbing it to make sure that it all goes into the creases and the design, and then smoothing it back over, making sure that there are no clumps or pools of paint anywhere, because that's just gonna ruin it. So take your time on this one if you have to. First coat of paint is on, so now all we have to do is let this dry. I'm debating if we are gonna need to do like another scuff sand. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see until it's dry, but with all the curves, I'm kind of worried that it might be a little bit bumpy. So once it's dried, we'll know if we need to or not, but otherwise we just gotta hang tight and wait till it dries. All right, so the first coat is dry, and actually to my surprise, it's feeling super smooth. So I think we're just gonna go ahead and go straight into the next coat. All right, so now that the second coat is on, we're gonna let this dry and get into the top coat. All right, so second coat is now dry, and I'm not seeing anywhere where we're gonna need to do a third coat. So I've got my top coat in here. It's the polyacrylic clear matte, and I'm gonna go around the edges and do the same, just applying all the top coat. And make sure that you're doing your best to apply it as evenly as possible, because this is definitely not a product that you want to overwork by keep swiping back and forth. You just kind of gotta do it in a few swipes and call it good. Otherwise it starts to get tacky and it'll look and feel uneven if you're just swiping over it 1,000 times over. So just get it done as slowly but as evenly as you can and call it good, because you don't want it to get tacky on you. All right, so the top coat is now on. All we have to do is let this dry, and then we can take off the tape and see how well the tape worked in our favor to keep the paint off the mirror. So the top coat is all dry, and my favorite part is peeling off all of this tape. There's not really a method to how you do it, although instead of like pulling up on it like that, I would recommend pulling it out, because if you're pulling it up like that, you risk the chance of it peeling some paint off with it. So I'm just gonna do my best to peel inward so that it doesn't take any of the paint off with it. And you can see that it did get a little bit on the mirror, so we will have to figure out how to get that off. But yeah, now I'll have to do touch-ups, because you see how I was pulling up. Try your best to pull outward if at all possible. So otherwise, another way to do it is pull from the the inner mirror and try to pop it out like that. That's probably actually the best way to do it. But depending on how you're taking it off. Alright, so the best way that I have found to get paint off of the mirror is simply by taking an old toothbrush and some rubbing alcohol. And literally it just comes off right away. So I'm dipping my toothbrush into the rubbing alcohol. If you see here, there's a spot right there, right? So literally all that you do, try not to get the frame itself, and I also use my fingernails just a little bit to help guide the paint to come off, but literally that's all you gotta do. And then I like to take a paper towel, oops, and just wipe it away. So the rubbing alcohol pretty much just loosens up the paint, allowing me to scrape it off easily. And it kind of looks messy right now, but it'll look so much better once we actually clean the mirror off with some Windex. And right here would be another really great example to watch what I'm doing. So I'm just going right along, and it's scraping that paint off, loosening it up, yet not ruining the frame, the paint on the frame. Okay, so now take our paper towel. I hate them. And it's gone. And you know, when you're painting mirrors, you can only get it so perfect. Just do it the best that you can. You might, as the painter, you might be able to see some of the marks, but as the buyer, you might totally overlook them. So just do what you can, but don't stress yourself out about it, because especially going around a mirror, you can see every little spot, but as long as you are doing your best and checking your work and making sure that you're really trying and it looks like a decent, a really nice piece, then just don't overthink it, just do the best that you can, and in the end, it'll all turn out really well. So, just gonna keep getting as much paint off as we can, and then we'll do touch-ups. Another thing to keep in mind if you're stressing about getting all the paint off the mirror, is that as you're doing this, you're seeing it from super close up and flat down. But once people have it up against the dresser, they're not gonna see those tiny pieces unless they're really looking at it. So That's just another reason why not to stress out too much about it, because they're gonna be looking at the mirror, and of course you wanna give them a very good product. Like, you don't wanna sell them a piece of junk, but it'll look good. Just keep going and it'll be fine. We've got the entire edge cleaned off from the paint, and now it's time to do some of those touch-ups where when I was peeling off the tape, some of the paint had ripped off. So we're gonna go ahead and get a smaller brush and do some touch-ups. Alright, so for someone who doesn't have very steady hands, I would say I did a decent job doing that. I did get a little bit more on the mirror, so I'm gonna go back and just get more of the paint off that I just put on. But it's the same process, so no need to, so I'm not gonna record it or anything. But then once this is dry, all we have to do is spray down the mirror and clean the mirror off, and the mirror is good to go. All right, so we're on to the final step. I have some Windex sprayed on here. I didn't want to spray it straight on just because I don't know how it would go with the frame, but I've got Windex and we're just gonna wipe down the mirror. All right, it's looking much better, so let's get it against the staging wall with the whole set so we can see what the entire thing looks like all together. So we're back again with the weird angles. I didn't want anyone in the mirror, and I didn't want to set this up there just because this is supposed to be actually mounted up there, which I have the pieces for that, so when someone comes to buy it, they'll have that. But just for staging purposes, I just set it down here so that you get the whole idea. But yeah, we already did the video on the French Provincial set, but now it's a completed set because we have the mirror done, and I think it's hard to visualize, but hopefully I'll be able to take some good pictures to actually post it on the marketplace. If I can figure out a way to, I don't know, put it on here. The only thing that I'm nervous about is these like sharper edges. If I were to just lay it on top of the dresser, I wouldn't want anything to happen to it. But now that this is a completed set, I'm able to finally post it on the marketplace, and I can't remember what I said in the last video, but I'm ranging between 700 to 850. It's a huge range, so I really have to narrow it down and do some research to see what I think this will sell for in my area. But this was a quick and easy flip, you guys. Doing mirrors are possible if you have these mirrors that don't match dressers. It's always a fun idea to be able to, refinish the mirror as well. I mean, I know a lot of people will just throw out the mirror when they are refinishing stuff because it doesn't go with it, but it is possible to actually refinish the mirror as well. So it is, just another thing that you can add on to the value of the set that you're refinishing. So that is going to be the end of today's video, you guys. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.